Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Jackson, licensed professional counselor, and today we are going to have a real discussion about physical health and how our physical health can definitely impact our mental health. I have some beautiful ladies with me today to talk about and share our hysterectomy story. Notice I said our hysterectomy as I actually had to have a hysterectomy November of last year, and the statistic that 1 out of 4 women have to have a hysterectomy, and Black women are 3 times more likely to experience fibroids or other illnesses that would make it necessary for them to have a hysterectomy. So we wanted to talk about it. There's so many things that it and sometimes I feel a little cautious. There's a part of me that's like, I don't want to say Black women, but our relationship with doctors is much different, and it can definitely complicate things and even interfere with the type of care that we receive. So we want to have that conversation, like our experiences are real. So I have these young ladies with me. Some of them are comfortable having their face on camera. Some of them are not, and so I want to respect their privacy as they have agreed to be a part of this discussion. And I'm truly grateful. So welcome my wonderful panel here. As we have Evie, Miss Karima, Rita, and we have Alicia, and we'll have another young lady, Michelle, as she comes back on. But wanted to kind of start and talk with one. Um, what were some of your experiences or symptoms that you were experiencing that made you say, something's not okay. I need to get this situation checked out before, that something's not right. I need to talk to my OBGYN, or I need to talk to them. So who would like to start? You guys can jump in.
I guess I could start.
Yeah.
Me, I had fibroid problems since I was 14.
Wow.
I would have stomach pains, couldn't sleep, upset stomach, um, cramping to the point that like I couldn't stay in school all day. As I got older, it got worse. Um, couldn't do birth control because that's what doctors wanted me to have at first. They said it
Mm-hmm.
would help because my grandmother passed from blood clots.
Yeah.
So couldn't do the birth control thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then once I had my son, fibroids got out of control, and as he grew, the fibroids grew.
Mm-hmm.
So after having him, they tried to do a partial where they just took the fibroids out, but they grew back. That was like the first time. I had three different surgeries, and after the third surgery, they finally allowed me to have a hysterectomy.
Wow. Okay. So you
Um,
real long
when
journey.
I was pregnant, going back to the past, when I was pregnant, the first doctor told me that that was part of being pregnant and you should just deal with it. Be strong. You're a woman. This is what you're built for. And
Wow.
pain is part having a baby. Well, pain is not having a baby when you're laying in bed on bed rest after 2.5 months because of the
Mhm.
fact that the fibroids are growing with your child.
Yeah.
Um, Mind you, I had after having Kamari, the first surgery I had, Kamari came out 5 pounds 7 ounces.
Mhm.
One of the fibroids they took out, and they took out 11. One of them was the size of a cantaloupe.
Wow. Wow.
Um, so the pain was just, crazy.
Mhm.
I can say after having the hysterectomy, some of the pain did deplete. But
Mhm.
over time, now I don't have any issues anymore. But it was just the whole thing of trying to get a doctor to even give me the hysterectomy. I knew after having Kamari that I didn't want to have any more kids. And that's what kept
Mhm.
each doctor kept saying, well, you might want to have kids, and
Mm.
um, just because you had this problem with one, you won't have, you know, don't think that you're having with the other ones. Well, I know my body. I know what
Right.
I can personally deal with, the
Mhm.
pain level that I can handle, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to go through that no more.
Right.
So, but that was my story.
Yeah. Thank you. She had that to be pregnant and have your fibroids growing while your baby is growing, and then for you to tell your doctor happening in your body and they say just be strong. It's supposed to be painful. I go on even with that, but I'm gonna hold that for for later in the conversation. But just we're experiencing it's being ignored. But who else would share what symptoms they were experiencing to say something's not right?
I'll go.
Hmm.
Um,
B.
my experience is probably a little different because I don't have children. I've never had any kids, and I knew from the beginning that I didn't want any children. So I was always trying to get first my tubes tied, and that's what they did in 2008. I finally got a doctor and say, okay, they'll tie my tubes. It wasn't until maybe about 2010 that
Hmm.
I my periods totally changed. They were always very light, mild. It went from real light to real heavy, and I had a lot of pain. I had a lot of pressure, and I didn't know that that's what it was. I just thought, as you get older,
Mm.
things change, your body change. So this is just part of it. It
Right.
wasn't until maybe 2 years later when I was like, this is bad. Like I was having periods that were months long that I finally went to a female doctor
Hmm.
and she told me I had fibroids. And that's really the first time I had ever heard anything about a fibroid.
Wow.
And at that point, they, since I had already had my tubes tied and was no longer on any form of birth control, they wanted me to try that route, which I really didn't want to do at the time. And so she gave me a couple shots. I can't even tell you 100% what it was. I think it was a form of birth control, to be honest.
Hmm.
And it kind of subsided things for maybe 6 months. But after that, it was like it came back with a vengeance. And she went ahead and decided to do the hysterectomy. And my main thing was I didn't want to get cut. And she said that she couldn't do them laparoscopically because they were so large. And I had like four huge ones.
Hmm.
So I ended up getting, I guess, a partial hysterectomy because I still have my uh, ovaries. But my experience was I was kind of irritated that nobody ever told me that this is a possibility. I just
Right.
thought I was living with how your menstrual cycle progresses as you get older and your body starts changing. I didn't realize something was wrong.
Hmm.
But now that I've had the hysterectomy, no more issues. I feel a lot better. I'm still don't have all the energy I think I should have,
Hmm.
but now that they're out, I don't have the same issues that I was having, like always being sick, something always wrong. So
Yeah.
that's my experience with my
Yeah.
hysterectomy
Yeah.
symptoms.
Yeah. Thank you. And Karima, you're right. You bring up a point. Not everybody knows that this is something that can happen. Like know that fibroids can affect their period, or know that there's even a thing called fibroids,
Right.
and what it does to your body and how it affects your energy levels, all of that. So that's why it's so important, for us to have this conversation, to bring more awareness so that people can pay attention to women can pay attention to their bodies. Truly, truly. And next, who else wants to share?
I guess I'll jump in.
Okay, Rita.
Okay. The family history part that Corinna talked about was so huge. I
Hmm.
was completely unaware that fibroids ran in my family until probably 6 months to a year before I had a hysterectomy, and I've been dealing with them for about 7 years at that point. I was told by two OBGYNs, once they established that I had fibroids, that it was because I was African American. I was in my 30s, and it was, good luck and deal with it. Um,
Wow.
yeah, my cycles were not average. They were very light, very short, no cramps, nothing really to write home about. And they started to get longer, was my first indication. The first doctor that I'm like, hey, like this is happening, told me, you're getting older, the body changes. There was no check for fibroids at that point. It was basically, suck it up, buttercup. And so I was completely uncomfortable with the answers. The bedside manner was just a bit much because clearly something was happening. So I found a second OBGYN who also explained, as if I was unaware, that at that point I was mid 30s, I was African American, and, good luck. She, however, discovered the fibroids, completely
Mm.
dismissive about them because, this is just going to be your life, because they were really small. um, she said that, yeah, this could be attributing to the issues that you're having, but because they're so small, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to watch them. So I was
Mm.
basically to suffer through my symptoms is what it was, because they weren't large enough. There weren't enough of them. This was just what I was supposed to go through because I was mid 30s and African American. I sought out an African American OBGYN after about another year or two because things were getting worse. And she started from scratch. She did an ultrasound. We compared the sizes. She explained the location of them and how that would impact things. And her first stop was birth control. She did not want to jump right to a surgery if we were able to help the symptoms. I now am a firm believer that birth control simply masks the symptoms and does not help the root of the
Absolutely.
problem,
Hmm.
which is why my body started to reject the birth control. Several pills, several doses, several types. And finally, I had a 52-day cycle. And I said, well, enough's enough. And I called and I said, yep, we're not going to try anything else. I've had enough. We're going
Hmm.
to do surgery. Either you're going to do surgery or somebody else is going to do it, but I'm going to have surgery. And so I went in and she agreed and we did tests, and the rest is history. But it was definitely much more of an ordeal than I feel like it needed to be. Had
Mm.
I had the information and insight walking into it, I may have handled, not may, I would have handled things differently and advocated better for myself. But, spilled milk at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Family history is so important. I will say that is one thing that was fortunate for myself. I had the knowledge of my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, all had hysterectomies. So I kind of was hoping maybe potentially I could get out of it, but it that family history piece is so important. So we need to
Mm-hmm.
have more conversations, more, let's have a girls' night. And let's talk about our health and what runs in our family so that we can be prepared and even hopefully even find some preventative ways, right, to address this as well. Thank you so much for sharing, Rita. EB, did I see you about to come on?
I guess I can go next. That's fine. So mine comes with a little backstory.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say after I had my first son in 2011, that's when I first started noticing my cycle had been kind of off, where I was skipping months and things like that. And I had done birth control for years and just never really got back on it after I had them. And the doctor I went to, she basically tested my cycle regularity to just being overweight, and I needed to lose the weight, and that would fix things, or I can get on birth control to try and help it. So I tried both, still didn't help anything. So went to several other doctors in the process, because for years I dealt with irregularity with cycles, and just super heavy cycles, with my heaviest being lasting like 81 days, to the point I became anemic. To which the doctor that I started going to in 2017 and finally diagnosed me with polycystic ovarian syndrome, she suggested the ablation would be the route that I could go, because it would remove the inner lining of my uterus, and it would pretty much reduce or eliminate my cycles from happening, which at that point I was gung-ho for. So I had the ablation in late November, early December of 2019, and everything was golden after that. She even showed me the pictures of how, like, from my uterus, to say, show like I cleaned it out, everything's good to go. Well, come May of 2020, this is probably TMI, but I started having issues where I noticed that I was not going number two regularly. Like, I went from being normal, like going 2 or 3 times a day, to nothing at all, and it's been like 3 days. So
Mm.
I went to my primary care physician thinking it was something, maybe I needed a laxative, or something's blocked or something, but something's not right. And of course, because I've had this ablation, it can't be anything gynecologically,
Right, right.
So went to her. She prescribed me some laxative to help, which it did, but then it continued to get progressively worse, where if I did not take the laxative, I was not able to go. And I know that's not normal. You're not supposed to be on laxatives for weeks at a time.
Mm.
So she had me go in for an x-ray. The x-ray showed that it was maybe hardened stool, and that was the problem. So they told me to just continue on the laxatives. So this continued with including more laxatives, stool softeners, a plethora of things. We got to even to suppositories, because it became that bad, to the point July 1st rolled around, and I was to the point where I was losing weight. I was not able to really eat at all, because if I ate, the pain would get worse, because of course I can't go to the bathroom at this point. So I was working for a major healthcare system in our area, and the head of my department is the head of the emergency room
Mm.
for that healthcare system that I work for. And so she said that, if the doctors, if you have doing all this, it's got to be something else going on. So she told me, just go to the ER and we'll get you checked out. So I get to the ER. I'm in extreme pain at this point in time, because it's like I'm feeling everything as it's passing through. Like, it's hurting. I'm thinking something's locked.
Right.
I'm going to the bathroom, like having to go pee like every hour, an hour, because it's just so painful, and everything just pressing at that point. So, the attending in the ER was like, well, I'm going to do a CT scan and see what's going on with you and see what's blocking you up. So about an hour later, he comes back with the results, and he's like, yeah, it's not your colon, it's your uterus. I'm like, what are you talking about? So he then tells me that, I don't know what is filling up your uterus, but your uterus is enlarged. And that's what's
Mm.
pushing on your organs, and why you've been in so much pain. So from then, it went from a locked bowel to I need a gynecology consult at this point to see what's going on. So at this point, they come in, and God bless it, it's during COVID, the height of COVID at that point. This is July
Yeah.
2020. And so I'm already on edge being there. You know me, Alicia. I'm very paranoid when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they are short supply for things in the ER, and they tell me, okay, we don't have any lube. And at that point, I'm in so much pain. I'm thinking, okay, just go ahead and do what you got to do. But hindsight is 2020. So
Oh.
I'm in there going through a pelvic exam. No lube. They put the speculum in, and they tell me, suck it up. You've had 2 kids. You'll be all right. It's not that bad. Yeah, the looks on your face is the same one that I had. Again, but I'm in so much pain at this point in time that, and of course, I didn't take any pain meds because I'm thinking it's just a locked bowel. I need to be able to drive home. I'm
Right.
not going to take any pain meds. So I'm doing this without any kind of pain intervention at all. And they run the test and they look and they say, okay, what it is something called, you have a rare condition called hematometra. So what it is when they did the ablation, the scar tissue from the ablation built up in my uterus. And where most times when you have a cycle, it
Mm-hmm.
sloughs off the inside of your uterus. Well, mine was just
Oh my
continuing to
goodness.
build up. So by the time that this was discovered, my uterus was the size of a woman's who was 5 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, I was being crushed from the inside out by my uterus.
Oh my
To which, when I found this out, I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do? I'm in pain.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, pain meds are addictive, so we really refrain from giving those. And I'm like, you just told me my uterus is crushing me from the inside, but you don't want to give me anything for pain. Okay, you're not touching me, because they're like, you need surgery. I said, you're not touching me. I said, I'd rather go home than have
Mm-hmm.
someone that is more concerned about a drug addiction from somebody that has worked in healthcare for numbers of years and never had an issue with any kind of medication. I'm going to go to who I know and who I can trust to do my surgery. So I
Right.
left in pain. I left from that ER and did not have the surgery for another, that was Thursday, I believe. I didn't have that surgery until
Mm-hmm.
Monday. And because of other health conditions that I have, they were hesitant to have me take any pain meds at that point in time because it could cause excessive bleeding during the surgery. So I went all those days. I couldn't take any Tylenol, no Motrin, no anything during that time. So I just laid in the bed for days, just with tears running down my face. To the point I got to the ER and I was shaking. I couldn't even speak because I was in so much pain at that point. And they finally took me back and they removed it, and my surgery was a success. They were able to remove it. I still have my ovaries, so I did not get a full hysterectomy with this, but things have improved greatly. No more worrying about cycles, no worry about anything growing back. I had a little party when, like, once I finally healed, because it's the healing process took forever, because apparently
Yeah.
my uterus from having two C-sections had adhered to my abdominal wall. So they had to
Ah.
remove my uterus from my abdominal wall when they did the surgery. So that made the healing process even more extensive. So it took the full 8 weeks for me to get 100%. Um, but yeah, I had a little personal party where I took a trash bag and I threw away every last tampon and sanitary napkin I had in the house. I looked like one of those ladies in the old school Massengale commercials, running, frolicking through the field, throwing all my stuff out because I was just so excited that I no longer had to deal with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's my
After
story.
all of that, yeah. After all
Yeah,
of that, I mean,
yeah.
yeah. That's. Uh, whew.
It's the you don't need pain medication for me. What?
Um.
I'm not
I'm
gonna
trying to
say what
wait.
I
I'm
said,
trying
but
to
they got
wait.
an earful. They got an
Huh?
earful. I kept it PG for the podcast purposes, but trust and believe, they got an absolute earful, because it was an insult to my intelligence and it was an insult to my background. You're not gonna treat me any type of way because you see the color of my skin, and that's exactly what it was. Because the attending had actually offered me a pain medication. And I turned it down because I said, no, that's too strong for me. I won't be able to physically drive or leave here when it's time for me to go home once you figured out what's going wrong. But dealing with a whole different demographic of physicians that obviously believe that African Americans don't feel pain still, they, yeah, it was a different scenario and a different ending.
Whew. I'm trying to keep myself together. That yeah.
Hmm.
I saw I believe it was, I think TikTok, everything on TikTok now, but I saw this. It was two doctors talking, and it was an, I guess, intern or OB, and he was talking about how the amount of operations, the just the regular procedures that women have to go through without any anesthesia, without any pain medication. on a regular basis, and that definitely made me think about what I experienced. But even hearing you being just flat out told you don't need pain medication to power through it,
Hmm.
Alicia having that same experience, you this is, you're built for this. You're a woman. You're built for this.
Yep.
It's like who okay. Shelly, you should share your story because yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing all of these different stories, but yeah, and it's really unfortunate. It's sad that we have to experience this. Um, so my story is a little bit different. It wasn't. I didn't have anything like really bad happen at once where it had to have happen. Um, on an emergency basis, but with me, I didn't realize how depleted I was until the light bulb came on. So after, just kind of being on the go, 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 not necessarily paying as much attention to my body as I should have been paying, I got to a point where I realized that because I didn't have a history of period cramps, that just isn't something that I experienced. However, as I started to get older, I started to experience those, and then it started to get very painful, um, to the point where it was getting unbearable. And then I noticed that my periods became very heavy. So I went from, mom on the go, working, just doing the things that mothers do, um just going, and then I got to the point where I couldn't go anymore. So I was forced to pay attention to my body. And for me, it was just noticing how tired I was and the extreme fatigue after my periods, during and after my periods. So I had the heavy cramping, I'm sorry, the painful cramping, the heavy periods, and just the extreme fatigue. So I went to my gynecologist, who happened to be a Black female gynecologist. Um, and I expressed what I had been feeling, and it was known. I had already known that I had fibroids, but they were small. So I went to my gynecologist, who was aware of the fibroids, and I saw her. It was downplayed. It's just something that happens as you get older. It's hormonal, and just me being tired, of course, lose weight and go through all of these things to sort of alleviate some of the symptoms that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kept going back. I went back again, and I said, I'm tired, and I asked for blood work, and I asked for things. And I saw her physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner, who was also African American woman. Um, I saw them both together on the same day,
Mm-hmm.
talked about my symptoms, talked about what I was experiencing, the fatigue and things like that. So, I asked for this blood work. So, they called me, after my blood work came back, and it was, yeah, you're tired, but just drink some coffee.
Say what now?
Now, um, I have other health conditions as well, and coffee is usually not something that's recommended by healthcare professionals.
No.
So it was, if you need energy, just drink coffee, work out, do these things. And I'm like, look, I'm not a lazy person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything left. I'm exhausted. So I decided that I no longer wanted to be in the care of those two individuals, those two medical professionals. I didn't want to see them anymore. So ironically, I found a Caucasian man,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to him, and he reviewed my blood work. He did some more tests, and I went to see hematology, and my iron was so low that I had to get iron infusions. So that was, for to have to go through that, you're
Yeah.
really, really
Mm-hmm.
depleted. You
Yeah.
really don't have any energy when you have to get infusions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I was on a really high dose of vitamins, just to try to build myself back up. by that time, I was done with the uterus. It was time for her to go. Um, I was done, having children. My children were, almost at that time, almost adults, and one was an adult. So there was no chance of me later in life wanting to have any children. And at my age is, that's something that's just not for me. So I knew that me having hysterectomy, wasn't going to impact my life in that way. So I was pretty confident in what I wanted. And he threw some ideas out and I said no. And at the time, I knew where my insurance was, and I told him that, we need to get this thing going by the end of the year so that it works for both of us financially. So I had met my deductible and my out of pocket, for the year. So I'm like, hey, look, I don't want to have to pay a high premium or a high copay for this surgery, and I want to make sure you get paid up front. You have to wait on me to pay you to pay. I want to make sure that we both get, have the best financial option. So he scheduled my surgery before the end of the year, and that was probably, I saw him the first time maybe in October, and I started, seeing him regularly. And the first visit, we put the surgery date in the calendar. So, he tried to talk through some of the other options, and nope, we weren't doing that. We were going to have a hysterectomy, and everything went well with my surgery. I had the laparoscopic surgery where they went through the belly, so I didn't have the transvaginal surgery like some others have had. Post-op was really good. I healed very well. But I found out my pathology report showed that I had a condition which was only treatable by hysterectomy, and that was the source of my pain. It's called endomyosis, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. But it is when the lining of the uterus grows into the uterus. So the only way to treat that is with the hysterectomy, and it causes extreme pain. All of the symptoms, everything that I was experiencing was because of this condition that nobody checked me for. And then they also found numerous of fibroids that weren't discovered in previous ultrasounds. And my fetus, I'm sorry, not my fetus, I'm sorry, my uterus was the size of a 5-month fetus. So I had been carrying that around, unknowing that, this is what was going on inside of my body. And the lining of my uterus was so thick, pretty similar to what EV's situation was, where it causes like extreme pain. So to be dismissed by healthcare professionals who I had been seeing for some time, it's really sad. And it's especially sad for those who, don't necessarily have the resources to seek healthcare or treatment anyplace else.
Absolutely.
So that's my story in a nutshell.
I think one, knowing some history for me, I think it was a Trevor Noah show. They were talking about just how long it took for doctors to give women pain medication for childbirth. And then how that took like centuries of work to get to do, like to believe that women are really experiencing pain when they birth a human out of their bodies, and then to not listen to a woman when she's saying something's wrong with me, like something, I'm in pain and I'm not built for that. And then again, us as specific as Black women not listening to us, and what you experienced, Michelle, was two Black women saying, hey, like, this is just a part of it,
deal with it.
We got to cope, we got to, and us not even sometimes seeing ourselves as human, right? Like we do it to ourselves sometimes. And even Oh yeah, the comment from Robbie Evans, like she's like, "This is my third surgery day. I'm just so frustrated. Like not listen. The
Oh,
doctor is just not listening to us. Please listen to us. Like listen to us. We know what we're experiencing. You know, even as a therapist, I'm always saying you are the expert on you. I only see you for an hour a week. You're telling me what you're experiencing. I'm going to listen to you. We need to. I think sometimes that the physical health profession could benefit from that model, just to listen to us. I know you got all the information. You went to medical school. That's wonderful, but we're experiencing something, and it's not just in our heads. We're not making this or making a mountain out of a molehill. This is our bodies, you know. And like you, Michelle, for me, I'm on the go, and unfortunately, I've always had heavy periods. I've always had heavy cycles since I was like 13, 14 years old.
wow.
And so I just was. Now in the last, I'll say around like 2018, 2017, 2018, they became very heavy to the point where like I, it was, whenever I was on the cycle, I was just always nervous, and I was trying to like not have an accident, like just making sure, because they were just so heavy all the time, no matter what, and then I started to experience just pain in my lower abdomen, like cramping, like extreme cramping. I'm like, this is okay. I think it's time. Like I knew that this was potential to happen, and I had, like you, Michelle, had the iron infusions before. I had that in, and I had a black female OBGYN, and she said, well, your fibroids aren't that big. I mean, they're not that big. But my hematologist said, well, the size of your fibroids is like a, you know, the uterus isn't that big, Alicia. It's about like a quarter, a third of your your uterus. That's a big size. So she was not African American, but she was like, this is kind of a big deal. But I was still in a space of not knowing, like, hey, am I going to have, you know, a child or not? Am I going to have a child or not? And then having this still be a problem for years and years, and then experiencing this pain. And so I finally go into a new OBGYN, and she was a white Caucasian OBGYN, and she tells me, she said, Alicia, you have a uterus the size of a woman who's 4 months pregnant. And you need to, I would recommend this for you. She's like, we do an ablation, they're just gonna grow back. They're just gonna grow back.
So just to kind of point out, when we think about, I think we all have had similar, we've heard about the size of our uteruses. About, am I saying that right? It's
Mm-hmm.
probably mispronounced. However,
Charge it
four
to
to
our head.
5 months, uh, you know, when you're pregnant, your body goes through like a whole metamorphosis. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to, I mean, you get stretching, you get cramping, you get pain as your body is changing to support this uterus, to support this fetus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even, you feel that when you're 4 to 5 months pregnant. So to be, dismissed
Yeah.
when you're carrying a fibroid or multiple fibroids
Mm-hmm.
that result in you having a fetus that size, that fibroid or those fibroids had to grow. You felt that.
Mm-hmm.
You felt that stretching. You felt that pain. You felt that cramping. And why is it that we're not being heard when we speak on the things that we feel? Like, you feel that as it's happening. So for someone to say, oh, it's just as if you were pregnant, okay, well, that's something too that we have to talk about.
Right.
Just that whole change in your body
Mm-hmm.
is, that's an important and critical change that we should be paying attention to. Your body's changing so that it can accommodate this new being inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even though it's a fibroid, it's still taking nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was like, they were like leeches because they drained everything out of me. Are we not taking that into consideration? Or are the healthcare professionals not taking
Mm-hmm.
that into consideration?
Absolutely. And she almost had to stress to me. She's like, "You have several." She said they're numerous. That's the word she used. Numerous. You have numerous fibroids, and we need to address this, very soon. And so, because I'm on the go, I'm a goer. Uh, don't much stop me. I was like, okay, doc, I'll listen to you. And then we get to the point where it's my last cycle before my surgery. I had to go to emergency because I was like, I felt so weak, and the flow was so heavy, like I thought I was going to pass out. I was going to pass out, and I was like, oh, this doctor may have made the right decision of recommending a hysterectomy, because I was just so on the go. So I'm saying this for us Black women who always have to be on the go and doing something, and we have to listen and pay attention to our bodies, because it's something I, again, had just grown accustomed to being week, and didn't understand that being tired for 2 weeks, because I would be tired the week before my cycle and the week of my cycle. So I just thought being tired for 2 months out of 2 weeks out of a month, that's just what happens. No, no, it is not. It's not. Um, and so I wanted to talk about it. And I think everybody pretty much had touched base about like the type of treatment that we get. I'm sorry, Rita, did you want to share something?
I was just gonna say,
Mm-hmm.
when when you're on the go, your brain conditions, or you condition your brain to go, no, this is just normal. I'm just tired
Mm-hmm.
during this time. And that's what nobody talks about, are
Right.
the physical things that can't be seen, right? You can't test for it, you can't get an x-ray, you can't get a CAT scan. The exhaustion, the depression, that I can't wear certain colors, I am afraid to leave the house. I don't know if
That part.
anyone else had an issue with airplanes. I
Mm-hmm.
found that airplanes completely threw my cycle out of whack. It didn't matter where I was. It didn't matter what birth control, what time of the month. It was horrible. It was horrible.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend who, um, you know, who was going to church with me, and would not wear the church supposed to wear all white on first Sunday. She's like, that's not happening, because it's not. I can't risk that. Right. Um, Definitely the first 2 days of my cycle, I I I was just very cognizant of what I wore, and like I had to wear multiple things. I'm trying not to overshare, but I had to wear multiple things to make sure like there was not an accident. And so it's, yes, Rita, it's much deeper than what we even are aware of sometimes, of how much we're carrying before things get treated and
Yeah.
addressed.
And having to worry about that added stress, that
Hmm.
additional thing, not to mention you're tired, like Rita said,
Hmm.
you're tired. You don't feel like anything. You're literally running on fumes. And then you have to take those extra steps, and you're anxious about double checking, making sure that you're all good there,
Hmm.
despite all of the things that you've done to prevent an accident. It may not have been enough.
Excellent.
I agree. I
It's
agree.
almost, I don't want to, sometimes we use words that are kind of, that just overdo it, but
Mhm.
it is a bit traumatic
Yeah, it
to
is.
experience this, because when nobody's listening, it's like you're in the world alone and nobody understands what you go through, because nobody is listening, and they're not, in the ladies room with you, and they're not in your body, and when you try to describe what's happening in your body, nobody believes it.
Hmm.
It's you're
Yep.
you're you're doing too much. You're over exaggerating. It's
Hmm.
not that bad. Come on. How many women have dealt with this already?
And that's the crazy thing to me, that another woman would say that to you. Another woman would fix their mouth to say something like that to another female, knowing at some point, even if they don't have fibroids, we've all had a crazy menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
amplify that a little bit. That would be the last thing I would tell anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 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 really it's a mind blowing often for me, especially when I was going through this process. What they gave me were hormones to help reduce the bleeding because it was so heavy. My doctor was like, so because she was like, okay, we got to have your iron levels in order to have this surgery, Alicia. So you got to take. Well, the hormones made me very, and I was like, I can't take these hormones. Like, I can't take these hormones and like do my job. Like, I can't be a therapist during and
Oh, wow.
be depressed at the same time. Like, doc, I need you to. She's like, I understand. So, like, it got to the point where we almost weren't able to do the surgery because my iron levels was like right at that like teetering line, and she was nervous. I could kind of, she had the worry look. She's like, we could do it, but it was because I those hormones had took my mood all over the place, and I was like, I cannot function like this. And sometimes even the treatment, like I remember even Rita and Evie saying like the birth control is like, what is this doing? Is this really treating it, or is it making it worse? For me, the hormones definitely made things worse for me. Even the testing piece, which was the piece that I was getting going to just address about the whole less no pain medication, as I had to have um, the biopsy. So when they say you're going to have an endometrial, did everybody have an endometrial biopsy?
No.
Yes,
Yes.
I
Okay.
did.
Yes.
Mm. It's where they take a piece of the lining of your uterus to test to make sure that you do not have that there's no cancerous fibroids. So I was already nervous because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. And I'm kind of glad I didn't. Normally I do like watch some YouTube videos to see like, okay, I'm going through this procedure. Let me see what it's about. But I'm glad I didn't, because I think if I did, I would my anxiety probably would have been a little higher. But my husband was there to hold my hand, but it was definitely some of the most excruciating pain I've probably ever experienced. Uh, and I was like, again, could this potentially may have been done like with just some pain medication, or at least had some given beforehand, and then the procedure itself caused me to continue to bleed even more. So I was bleeding for weeks after this procedure. Um, but you know, it's just mind blowing sometimes what you have to go through this process, and how much you're not really prepared for. Like, there's not really an in-depth conversation about what this process really entails and how it might affect your body.
Well, not only that, they don't even explain to you what the procedure is actually going to be, because I work at the same building where my OBG was located. I work in a
Mm-hmm.
medical suite. So right next door was my OB
Mm-hmm.
who did the procedure. And he told me, well, we're going to schedule you for the biopsy. You could do it during your lunchtime and you should
Mm-hmm.
be able to go back to work. Well, no,
No, no,
there
you
was
no,
no
you
way
did
What?
not do that.
after they did that that I was going back to work. I
Yeah.
ended up taking a day off, and I think almost I took the next morning off. I did go that next afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
but that that afternoon there was no way I was going back to work. That
Mm-hmm.
was like other Alicia said, that it was just so much pain that
Mm-hmm.
they don't explain that to you or go into detail. He literally said, "You'll be able to go back to work. You'll be fine after this."
No,
No.
no, there's no way.
That is insane.
I was grateful that I was working from home, but I still it was still an order because you're cramping for at least 2 to 3 days after that. Because again, your body is like trying to regrow the lining of uterus that they took, right? And our bodies, that's how they were made. Yeah, and it's painful. It's extremely painful. So and that's how I found out that I had both fibroids and polyps because they were growing on the lining of my uterus. And
I
it's
think this just kind of really all of our experiences, the importance of speaking up and advocating for ourselves as women overall.
hmm
These all of what we've gone through is just really it really shows why we need to advocate for ourselves, why we need to speak up,
hmm
because having to experience pain for that type of procedure is
yeah.
it's almost inhumane.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
We should not have to. It shouldn't
hmm
just to say, "Oh, you're able to go back to work." Really? Who made that decision?
A man.
Well, not only
Go
speaking of men,
Yes, he
it's in the medical
was.
textbooks. It's the medical textbooks are designed and have been for decades to say that black females do not feel or black people do not feel the same amount of pain as somebody that is Caucasian. They have the what's his name, J. Marion Sims. He was quote unquote the founder of gynecology, and he used to experiment on African American or slaves, black women, and without anesthesia, doing gynecological exams. And this is who formed the idea that black women or black people have thicker skin and their nerve endings aren't as long as Caucasian people. So that's why we don't feel pain. And this is still preached and taught. So you can go back to somebody that just came out of medical school maybe 5, 6 years ago, and they're still under the same ideal that this is what is fact. So when black women come into a place and say, I'm in pain, they're like, oh, it can't be that bad. Y'all don't feel nothing that bad.
hmm
Hmm. That's a
Yeah,
shame.
it is. It
Ooh.
is sad. But I think the more that we speak up, the more
hmm
that we can sort of debunk that whole thought
Agreed.
process, because it's unacceptable for us to have to experience
Yeah.
what this level of pain for procedures that require anesthesia. Like they should require it.
Yep.
hmm
I
Yeah.
have never heard of any man getting a vasectomy without receiving any pain medicine.
Exactly.
Touche.
Hmm.
And
Just
they
never heard of it.
wouldn't allow it to be done without it.
Hmm.
Oh wow.
Any color man.
That part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're strong, right? Those men are just as strong. So,
Right.
and it's not to say, listen, I don't think anybody should get cut on without any medication.
No, not
Okay,
at all.
Amen.
not at all. So
Yeah.
we're included in that. Is what we're trying to say. Like no, it should not be. It should not be. And so for you guys, I wanna make sure we're being mindful of the time too. Um, I don't know if anybody experienced any difficulties during the surgery or where there were any complications or anything like that. Mine did go pretty smoothly. I had mine during. So it was the end of 2021. So the pandemic, the hospitals were still open, but it was like right before the rush of Omicron, so I got in there before that happened. But no complications. Things went really smooth. It was a very smooth recovery. Um, and so yeah, I just want to check to see if anybody have any issues or complications or difficulties during surgery.
I didn't have any complications,
Mm-hmm.
but I was cut like I had a baby.
Uh,
So for somebody who didn't have a child to
mm-hmm,
have that done, I was traumatized on that part alone because I
mm-hmm,
went in asking, like I took my husband crying, like, can we please do this laparoscopically? Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want scar. I don't want the tissue. So
Right.
now I'm left with my little pooch that is, I can't stand it, but I can tell that it's so weak,
Mm.
and in my aftercare, it was, I didn't realize I was supposed to have like a band to kind of push my stomach back together. The band they gave me was like pantyhose, the initial one I had. Like I
Okay.
had a girlfriend was like, no, you need to go get you one of them tummy bands. And she got me one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still, to me, that was the most traumatizing part because they wouldn't do it laparoscopically. And I understand her reasoning. She said, just in case it is cancerous, if I have to cut it to get them out, I don't want to take that risk. And I understood that, didn't like it. But to me, that was the worst part. I had like 32 staples that had to come out. It, but at the end of the day, everything is fine though. But that's my only portion of it that didn't sit too well with me.
Sorry. Me, I had a lot of scar tissue from the previous surgeries I had because of the fibroids. As stated before, I had 3 surgeries for these fibroids. 2 where they just took the fibroids out, and then the final one when they did the hysterectomy. So because of the first 2, they wanted to. They said they're gonna do it when they go, I guess, like through your belly button or something. The
Mm-hmm.
laser one, which was supposed to take like an hour and a half, maybe 2. It took almost 4.5 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
To the point where they went out to my husband and it was like everything's fine, but it took a lot more, and we almost had to do the cut, which when I would have both of them done at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say my doctor was very patient. He did not cut me twice. I appreciate that. But to me, if they would have had just done the hysterectomy the first time, I wouldn't
Okay.
have to go through all that.
Okay. Right.
Because the first 2 surgeries, when I asked for the hysterectomy,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be going through all those years of the pain to the point where I had to have this now third surgery.
It's awful.
So mine, it went rather smoothly. Like I stated previously, I
Mm-hmm.
did have the issue where my uterus had adhered to the lining of my lower pelvic area, so that required them. Fortunately, they she was concerned that she was going to have to go in the more invasive way, but she was able to get a good view by just putting a fourth incision. So where most people that do laparoscopic, they only have 3, I have
Mm-hmm.
4 because she had to go in another way to be able to scrape in and separate my uterus from my abdominal wall,
Uh,
just to be able to get my uterus out. Yeah, that led to more pain, but I'm thankful that she was able to do it that way. And I guess my more concern was too, and I hate to say it like that because I respect all medical professionals. Don't get me wrong,
mm-hmm.
but during the time that I was there, on top of dealing with the height of the pandemic, it was also the time where the new medical students and residents are coming in. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are being part of their first surgeries at that time. So that was one of my concerns is that, with my rare case, I don't want to be somebody's guinea pig or
Right.
first trial. So my
Yeah.
doctor, being an African American woman, she knew how I was feeling about that, and she said, "Don't worry, I have another attending working on your surgery with me." So that
Mm-hmm.
helped a lot, knowing that I had 2 people that were experienced and well versed in how to proceed with this, because I just didn't want to be somebody's guinea pig,
Absolutely.
fresh out the gate.
Yeah. You have every right to say that. Every right to make that decision. And I think that's what Michelle was talking about, just advocating for ourselves. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so while you understand that everybody needs to learn how to do the surgery and do it well, you also have a right to say, like, I also just don't want a resident or a student doing my surgery, especially
Right.
with the complication that you had. Just
Yep.
imagine what would have happened if a student was, doing your surgery and not know to work with that, and then what would have happened, right?
Right.
Yeah, we have to definitely speak up.
Just to kind of add, I didn't have any complications, but then when I did go for my follow-up, my doctor, who I hadn't really seen that long, he was a new doctor for me.
Mm-hmm.
He was so excited when I went in. He said, I didn't want to tell you before, but you were looking kind of dull, and he said, but today you look good. You look like you have some life in you. So it was a healing. It was definitely necessary. And I was within 6 weeks, I looked totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So my skin looked better. My skin tone was better.
Yeah.
I was definitely more vibrant, more energetic.
Mm-hmm.
So no complications, but I could definitely see the benefit after the surgery, immediately after the surgery.
And so, talking to that, Michelle, so for anybody, was anybody given any extra like aftercare instructions, or what was their aftercare experience like? Curious if the doctor said, okay, if you're having this surgery now, you need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure you're okay.
No, not really. Nothing out of the ordinary. Let me say that.
So my doctor, she knows how I am. I'm like a lot of you, mover and shaker. I don't sit still. So I don't know. Like I told some of my friends, and they just laughed and shook their heads because it's like the stuff that she told me. Thinking back of it now, it's like she probably was just trying to put the fear of God in me just to make sure I sat still. But she told me that nothing too extensive. Sit down, because if you don't, your stitches could fall. Could tear, and your intestine could fall out of your vaginal area. And to hear that, it was like, okay, I'm gonna sit still. You don't have to worry about me moving. You put the fear of God in me. Because she knows how I am. I don't sit still. It's like I have stuff to do. I have a family. I have to keep moving, and I sat still. She made sure of it. So.
Yeah. Well, getting cut, I had no option. I couldn't. I was like hunched over for like 4 or 5 days initially. That was like the worst thing. That was the worst part of it. That and getting the staples pulled out.
For me, it was because when they're preparing you for surgery, they have to fill your belly with air. So I might be a little TMI, but I really appreciated the anti-gas medicine that they gave me.
Amen.
Because if you don't have that, you really have to ask your provider for that. It makes the world of difference because that air has to come out. So the anti-gas medicine really worked. It was really helpful.
Gas X for the win. Okay.
it was. I had prescription, so it was like really good.
Oh,
it was like eating a piece of chalk, but it was well worth it.
Well, so I wasn't given the wraps by the hospital, but I knew that was something I needed to have because I was on a couple of groups. I think hysterectomy sister groups on Facebook, so like I knew that I needed to get a wrap for that. Something that they do recommend, but the doctors for some reason don't recommend is like pelvic floor rehab, because that part of your body is now missing a muscle. So to build up your pelvic floor to support the rest of your body. So it's something I would definitely recommend to you guys and to look into, because it can mess with your back if you don't have that, and also cause issues with like urination and things of that nature. No, we're not trying to do too much TMI, but it can potentially happen if you don't have that support down there to have those muscles, intact. So something definitely to think about. For me, because I don't have any biological children, and I think there was definitely a part of me that wanted to have biological children. Going into the doctor office for my follow up was a bit interesting, just to see the moms with their bellies and the pictures of the babies on the wall. But I think it's a process. So I definitely would recommend for any mom who is struggling because of that, even to definitely work that out and seek support in that way if that is something you're struggling with, and to take care of yourself. We still, even though we are we have been freed from the monthly burden that we used to deal with, but we still are women. We need to take care of our bodies as well. So I'm so grateful for you all to be a part of this conversation. If there was a woman or young woman um, who potentially would be dealing with some of this stuff, because as we know, it is a real reality. Is there anything that you ladies would recommend to or say to a younger person who is dealing with health concerns or having irregular
Yes.
periods and don't understand what's happening with their bodies?
Don't
One
wait.
thing, don't wait. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't wait. And don't let anybody, like you said, don't let anybody deter you and tell you that this is normal. Because, like I said, I knew nothing about it. I just thought as you get older, you've never been 25 before. This is kind of progresses. If that's the case, still go in and have somebody check and let somebody else tell you that. And if you
Yeah.
don't like their answer, go to somebody else.
And that's what I was going to chime in. Do not feel like you have to stick with the same physician because you've been with them for years. If they are not willing to hear your point of view and provide you relief for what you were dealing with, you move on. And I did that myself. It took me years to find a physician and finally understood and was like, you're right. This isn't normal. Let's
Mhm.
fix it. Let's get you together.
Yeah.
I would also add, definitely, I agree with you ladies, but I will also add, talk to other women, ask
Yes.
them what their experiences were. How did you feel when you were, after you had a baby, or do you experience do you have fibroids? Do you experience heavy cramps? Because one thing that I learned after the fact, that there were so many other women that experienced what I experienced. I could have been using them as a resource
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
before going through the process. I could have had some insight on what I was going to experience, but because I didn't talk to anybody, I didn't think anybody understood. I didn't ask. So I
Yeah.
would say, ask your girlfriends' moms, because
Yes.
sometimes we don't necessarily know our family history, and that's okay. But there is always going to be another woman who has had a similar experience. So just ask. And most of
Absolutely.
the time, people, once you reach out, ladies are going to be willing to help you.
Hmm. Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we had this conversation. I think too, sometimes people are like, "Oh, this is," as we all are kind of walking the this show's like don't want to share too much information, but this is something that we need to talk about. Uh, just because you don't know unless you ask, and it's like I'm having
Absolutely.
irregular cycles. Are you having irregular cycles? Like, what's going on with your flow, right? Just say, like, what's happening with your body? Because this is happening to me, and it's not something that we talk about in everyday language. So, yes, definitely ask these questions because you're not the only person. You are not. The statistics don't lie. You are not the only person experiencing this. I think even Viola Davis, she came out and said, like, I had to get this uterus out of my body. Like,
Yeah.
get out. Because it was causing her too much pain, too much pain. So we need to ask questions. If a doctor is not listening to you, get another doctor. Advocate for yourself. Speak up. You are not crazy. You know what's going on in your body, and we have to also be mindful of just too. There are certain foods that do feed fibroids, and we have to be aware of those. I think that's also something that we have to be cognizant of and be aware of and educate ourselves too on as well. But definitely take care of your bodies and talk about it. I talk about it with my younger family members. I know they get sick of me, but I talk about it with them because I want them to know. I want them to know, and they don't. So they'll know how to make a decision for their bodies. It's it affects everything. Just like Michelle said, it affects everything. I was carrying a 4-month-old uterus, right? And you don't, and I wasn't even aware of it. My body was aware, but up here I wasn't aware. So it took somebody to tell me that for me to say, "Oh, okay, I need to do something different." So my conversations with my daughter is about this. It's like we need to have a conversation, to understand what to do. So I appreciate you ladies so much for joining on this conversation, being brave to do this, because you know our moms and aunties, they didn't have these conversations like this. And I think it's just no fault to them. It's just their generation and how, just things you just don't talk about. You just kind of, you grin and bear it, just like those doctors said to us, right?
Can
Yep.
I also add
Mm-hmm.
that none of that having this procedure does not change the fact that you are a woman.
Amen.
And some people will try to,
Mm-hmm.
say, well, you don't have the parts. We had the parts. Okay. We were born with the parts. I'm still a woman, even though that part had to go, but we are still a woman, we're still feminine. And, that having this procedure, having this medically necessary procedure does not take away from that. So I
And
just kind of wanted to add that piece.
to me, it adds because it gives you part of your
Amen.
life back. Like, it
Absolutely.
does it. It's not that burden isn't there. Like you said, having to worry about what you wear, how you're going to feel. Is this going to be during this time? And we do a lot of planning around that one time of the month anyway. So
Hmm.
could you imagine when it's exacerbated and it was stretched out for months? It, yeah, no, you get your life back.
Mm-mm.
I agree.
No, no. Thank you, ladies. So I appreciate it. Ladies, if you are, or even gentlemen, uh, that if you are experiencing or know a woman that's in your life, this is just a lens view of what that experience is like. Because I know even to hear it, sometimes men kind of just like try to steer clear of that of that conversation and steer clear of us when we're going through it, because we experience our highs and lows. We get it. We understand it, but also to also help support us through it, whether it's just holding our hand through a procedure or helping to advocate as well, and speak up as well. So I appreciate you taking your time out with me today and having this conversation. Please take care of yourself. And as always, be cool, be calm, be centered.
Yes.
Peace.